want to know the answers to questions. So if you create a big question, it pulls the reader into this world, and they will follow you anywhere.
Hey everyone, this is Let's Play, where we explore video games through a literary lens. I'm Jonathan, and today I'm joined with author and video game writer Cory O'Brien. And we're gonna have like a little roundtable discussion, two-people discussion about mystery games and mystery writing and mystery books, because Cory, as I mentioned, has written for video games like Monster Prom, Hollow Vista, just to name a few. And most recently, you have a new book coming out that's just been released called Two Truths and a Lie. It's
a cyberpunk noir story. It takes place in a near-future Los Angeles that has been drowned by climate change. And the protagonist is an elderly war veteran who is sort of floundering his way through the streets, getting beat up on his way to solving a mystery that involves an ex-lover he hasn't seen in a quarter of a century.
Thank you for being here.
I'm happy to be here.
I guess we can start with, what type of mystery fan are you in general? And also, how did that fandom lead you to wanting to write a mystery novel?
I am a fan of all types of mystery. I love the puzzle box nature of it. I love the Agatha Christie mysteries where everything kind of snaps into place at a certain point and everything has a perfect explanation. Sherlock Holmes, right? And like, I've even played the inscrutable Sherlock Holmes board game that is absolutely impossible. You're like actually trying to solve a mystery, and then you get to the end of it and it's like, here's how Sherlock Holmes would have solved it. He just would have known immediately. But I really like noir, because it's a lot messier than those other genres. Things don't have a clean solution, and it's less about the protagonist being so clever that they kind of snap everything into place. Obviously, the protagonists still are clever, in like a Raymond Chandler or whatever, but it's kind of more about their willingness to bleed for it. It's like, how much suffering are they willing to drag themselves through? How dogged and persistent can they be? How many different strata of society can they move through on the way to solving it? And so it's a great way to see a cross-section of a society, because an investigator has a reason to go everywhere.
Yeah.
And the language, obviously, I think is just, nobody really holds a candle to Chandler or Hammett or any of those guys.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think one of the things I love about mystery books and games is that aspect you're talking about, where you are introduced to a new environment, and because you're going along an investigation, like you said, you are going to all these different areas, you're interrogating different people, you're inspecting different levels of society. So it's such a perfect way of like introducing you to a new environment. That's why I really love mysteries that take place in places that I don't really know a lot about.
Right.
Like Where the Crawdads Sing, which kind of takes place in I think the marshlands of North Carolina. So you learn a lot about that there. But what are some of the mystery games that you really enjoyed?
Probably my favorite video game of all time is Outer Wilds. I love Outer Wilds, and I would consider it a sort of mystery solving game. You're almost like a science fiction archaeologist. You're flying around this galaxy, finding out what happened to this alien species that predated your own civilization in this galaxy. And I love the feeling of discovery in that game. I love solving those mysteries. So I think that would probably be my top. Another good one is the Case of the Golden Idol. That game is phenomenal.
Yeah,
and the
like
DLC that came with that. I like that method of investigating, pulling the words out of the environment and then arranging them into narratives.
Yeah, I really love the type of mystery games where you almost have to play them outside of the game. You almost need to kind of, the game will give you certain tools and an interface to kind of help things along, but many times I will find myself having to write things down and kind of piece the logic together myself. And I think that really just adds to the immersion of everything.
Yeah, that's part of the experience you're looking for. I mean, I had this experience playing Outer Wilds specifically, where I was playing for a while, banging my head against the same problem over and over again, and I was like, I'm done. I can't do this. And I went and I got into bed, and then the moment my head hit the pillow, I was like, oh, wait, no, I know. And then I got up and I went back to playing the game again.
Yeah, it's so addicting. Some of my favorites, I really like Outer Wilds too. I really love Return of the Obra Dinn. That's one of my favorites.
I love that game. I can't believe I didn't mention that. Yes.
Yeah, that one especially, because I also just love like that time period and like ships and things like that. And the game does such a good job of like immersing you in that world where you have like a logbook and you have to really like comb through everything and learn like the mechanics of a ship and what everyone's role is. It really makes you think outside the box in terms of trying to like identify who all these people are. You even have to like consider things like the accents people have and like cutscenes and like their names. It's so cool. I really love that one too.
Yeah, I also love in that game that you play as an insurance adjuster.
Yeah.
I like narrators or investigators who come at it from like a weird
Yeah,
background
yeah.
and bring something.
That is cool too, yeah. Yeah, I do love stories where you are kind of like an unheralded type of profession that usually doesn't get the limelight, and you have to kind of like utilize those unique skills to uniquely either solve the mystery or whatever, beat the game, as it were.
Yeah, it's cool to be underestimated.
Yeah. One game you mentioned in your email when we were setting this up was Hypnospace Outlaws.
Oh, Hypnospace Outlaw, yeah. That's a really fantastic game too. Really excellent writing in there. It's basically like a love letter to early GeoCities websites, like that era of the internet. It takes place on like a fictional alternate version of the internet that people can only access while they're asleep. You're playing as an admin, so it's like an unheralded profession, but you're going around reading people's websites, learning about them, figuring out who's violating the terms of service. I loved it.
Yeah, when you recommended it, I was interested and I started playing it over the weekend. That game is so hilarious. Because I can definitely identify with that time period of the internet that you're talking about, where it was like, it's like a bunch of MySpace pages and everyone has their own like theme song. The music in that game is so hilarious.
Oh yeah, and you can find all this music. There's tons of music files.
I know, there's so much. I know there's even like illegal like downloading tools in the game that you can download. You can get like viruses in the game and you have to download like software. It's really, really inventive.
Yeah.
And like basically like the screen is like a desktop computer. So it really does like make you get that modular like sense of being the person in the game. So when it comes to mysteries, obviously like a big thing is how much do you want to reveal, right? How empowered do you want the reader or the player to be able to like work things on their own? I know that's probably different whether you're writing a book or whether you're writing for a game, but like when you were writing Two Truths and a Lie, like what was your mentality about that? Like did you really want to make sure that you did leave a lot of clues so that, I don't know, X percentage of the readers might be able to figure out the whole thing by the end, or did you have like a different approach?
It's important to me in writing a mystery that all of the information be available at some point. I don't want anything to be in the book that the reader couldn't have at least accessed by the time the mystery is solved. That is definitely like a guiding light for me. I don't want to cheat in that way.
Yeah.
That said, that's not really the way that I think about noir specifically. Noir is more about the journey through it than about the puzzle-solving aspect of it. It's about the characters. I will say that there are clues throughout the book that if you reread the book after reading it, you will pull out some things that and be like, oh, how did I miss that? It was right there. I want the reader ideally to figure out what's going on like one sentence before the character figures out what's going on.
Yeah, I think one of the things I like about Two Truths and a Lie is that it is that cyberpunk kind of world, but you like the nature of the story, the nature of the mystery that has to be solved. You really do utilize the new mechanics of the world that you created in order to kind of like piece things together. So like memory is a huge theme in the book. So in your world, memories can literally be like bought and sold and exchanged for different currency and things like that. And it's cool to kind of think about how that would play into if you were like an investigator and you did have to find something out. Like how would you interrogate people? And I think it's really interesting like what you do with like the police force in the book and how they have like a finite amount of questions they can ask people. What are your thoughts on melding the world building with the actual procedural mystery elements that you're writing?
That was the whole point of writing the book in the first place is, I had the idea for a world in which information had replaced our fiat currency, and I thought the best way to explore that world is through some kind of investigation, because that's engaging directly with what the economy is. And there are a number of sort of stock scenes in noir that are really interesting to reimagine in a world that works this way. In pretty much every noir story, you have a situation where the investigator goes up to a lower level functionary, like a hotel clerk or something, and is having a conversation with them and has to bribe them. And bribery, obviously in a world with money, is very simple. Bribery in a world where information is money and you're trying to get information back from them becomes a financial negotiation in a different way. And so trying to do takes on those kinds of scenes, like what does that look like? What are the scenes where the protagonist who's sort of outside the law gets interrogated by the cops? What are those scenes like? In a world where information is money and the cops are basically extorting you. That's kind of the whole point, is just to see how those things intersect. Mystery's always about money. Mystery's always about information. What if they were the same thing?
You kind of touched this earlier on, where like mysteries, they can kind of go into two different paths. They can be very, very, it really is about like being able to figure things out on your own and following the mystery, and that can be very satisfying. And I think like those books are really cool. Like I really like Dan Brown books, like the Robert Langdon books, where it's funny because I feel like mystery books, those kind of mystery books, they are very gamey in a way, because that's sort of like part of the fun, right? Like trying to like work things out outside of you actually reading the book. And even in like, I know like the Da Vinci Code and stuff like that, there's like paintings and pictures and puzzles like in the game.
It's like an escape room.
Exactly, yeah, it's borderline like an adventure book. But then you have like a different type of mystery where maybe there's a mystery presented in the beginning, and maybe that is like the through line throughout the whole story, but it's not really what the book is about. There's like some other element that you're exploring, whether it's the environment, whether it's like family dynamics or power dynamics, corruption, and I think those are really cool too.
I agree with that. I do think that anytime you're writing something, it's possible to conceptualize it as a game in some way. Whether it's a game that you're playing with the reader that is like, here, let me set up these clues and see if you can figure it out, or if it's a game in the sense that like you set up some preconditions for a world and you play it out. You see how those rules interact with each other to generate a story. And I also do think that mystery writing in general, and noir in particular, is a great way to take a cross-section of a society. The investigator can go anywhere. The investigator can talk to anyone. They're always an outsider, so there's always a reason to explain what's going on, too. So a lot of mystery stories, not just noir stories, but like The Name of the Rose is a great example of this.
Yeah, Umberto Eco,
Yeah, and you have an investigator going into a Catholic monastery. And you get to see really how that whole thing works, and all of these conversations about religion and stuff, because there happens to be a murder there. Murder is obviously a huge part of the narrative, but you use that to learn a bunch of other things and raise a bunch of other philosophical points too, and I think that's a really cool opportunity.
That book I know was very influential. Have you ever played the game Pentiment?
Yeah, no, I haven't played Pentiment. It's on my list.
Yeah, because I actually interviewed the director of that game, Josh Sawyer, and he sourced that, or he referenced that book as a huge inspiration, because it's basically like similar time period. I think it's like 14th century Bavaria. And yeah, you play like an artist who's like working at an abbey, and there's a murder there. And it is kind of like an adventure game with branching narratives, but really what the game is about is you're exploring that time period where the peasantry is starting to become a little more skeptical of the church and potential corruption. And it's right around the time of like the German Peasants' Revolt, and like Martin Luther's becoming a thing, and people are starting to like look at the Bible in a different way, and printing has blown up, so people have much more access to information. It's kind of like similar to like the internet boom that happened hundreds of years later. So that's really what I feel like the game is about, and it's very interesting to kind of use the mystery format to kind of, like you said, like snake your way through all these interesting areas.
Exactly. Yeah, we want to know the answers to questions. So if you create a big question, pulls the reader into this world, and they will follow you anywhere.
So there's a lot of cool concepts in the book. You have these, I guess, like mentally controlled drones that are in the book. When people think cyberpunk is a genre, it evokes a lot of like visual and audio like type things. I'm just curious, like, what was your process for, using the stuff that's already out there, but also like building your own innovative things that you incorporated into Truths and a Lie, as far as like how the world was constructed?
I love reading cyberpunk from the 80s, because it's very much just like this this hyper-real 80s aesthetic.
Yeah.
It's clearly informed by an 80s aesthetic with the neon and the chrome and all of this, and I love that stuff. I love that aesthetic. I don't think that it plays quite the same. I feel like it almost feels like a little bit dated or anachronistic if it gets directly ported now. At least I don't feel quite right writing that specific aesthetic. I try and carry forward more of what I think of as the essential sort of philosophical aspects of cyberpunk. I heard someone else describe it as high-tech, low culture, high-tech, low life, and just like the griminess of it, the struggle of it, the economic realities of it. And all of that gives rise to an aesthetic, but the way that aesthetic looks is very much a product of the times. What do we think counterculture looks like? Because that's what the punk suffix is. We forget, because now we just affix punk to the end of any aesthetic. We have steampunk, which is another one that has sort of been turned into more of an aesthetic than it was originally. Punk sort of becomes like gate as a suffix, where we use it for a scandal. I do love that aesthetic, but I am trying to also update it and add to it.
Nice. Yeah, I definitely highly recommend the book. Even if you're not like a cyberpunk person, I do think there's a lot of interesting philosophical ideas that you present, particularly with like how we relate to each other, how we remember our relationships with people, and how that sort of represents who we are as people and how important that is.
The thing about memory and identity, that's a big part of sci-fi too. It's a big part of why I like to write, is it helps us understand ourselves, just like playing games. So it all comes together.
Exactly. All right, well, thanks for watching, everyone. See you later.
See ya.